To start, this woman is great as a person, as a coworker. She's the worst. Let's call her Regina. When I started at this place a year ago, Regina was to train me on an aspect of our job. I had to ask her to slow down and repeat herself several times because nothing made sense. Keep in mind, I've worked in this industry for 8 years longer than her. My boss was able to explain it clearly in 5 minutes, and I would have never had an issue. Shortly after starting, I noticed Regina would CC our boss on every email she sent to me. Regina would email me several times a day calling me out for problems she noticed, always CCing our boss. But I was always in the right and my boss would back me up. I emailed Regina, only Regina, and said I felt like she was trying to get me into trouble. I felt disrespected and I was wondering what I could do to improve. She replied, CCing our boss, telling me that if I felt that way, it was my own doing. Got it. My entire team works from home, so our boss has put some people in charge of certain things so one person has control. One of my tasks is issuing documents for signature via the very popular system we all know. Basically, my team sends me an email that says send these documents to X, Y, and Z, and I get to it. Good news, Regina only copies our boss on super important documents, which I understand. The other day, Regina sent me a request, and I failed to copy her when it was issued. Fixed in under a minute and did not cause any issue, but she still made a big deal about it over email and in our team meeting. Next request I get from her is, be sure to double check your work and all people are copied as detailed below. This pissed me off. The funny thing was, she didn't attach all the documents I needed to send, nor tell me where the docs were located for me to get them. Myself. I reply asking for the docs and she sends them stating, these are the final approved versions. Except they're wrong. First, we sent PDFs, not Word docs. She sent me Word docs. Second, the formatting was atrocious. Signature blocks cover 4 pages when they should be on 1. The vendor name and address were put into different tables, so it made no sense. So I sent it as is. Of course, my boss is copied on this and actually has to sign this doc, and she is not happy with the state of this document. I replied to my boss with the email from Regina saying this doc was approved by our boss and with my other projects. I didn't QC like I normally do, which is not expected of me, but I do normally to prevent issues down the road. Boss replies to Regina and CCs me, laying into her that Bat Kevin is not to fix her mistakes as he has his own job to do. This was also reiterated in our next team meeting, and I could see how angry my boss was. She and I had a one-on-one and she said she was not upset with me. The next request I got from Regina was incredibly detailed and had everything I needed in the right format. Reminds me of the time I had my new manager hop into my team's planning meeting to rake me over the coals for using the word ultimately in an informal update email I'd sent out to my account for my work for the previous day, where I noted that I had a discussion with a colleague about a design point and ultimately we decided that the current approach was the best. He apparently felt that ultimately was the wrong word to use and that the appropriate way to handle this was to interrupt a planning meeting to spend 5 minutes yelling at me about how I need to be more careful with my word choice. No MC here though, I shopped and left. Last I heard, the project fell apart under his leadership and was ultimately shelved. 10 man-years of dev effort down the drain. Edit, oops, there I go using the word ultimately again. I guess I didn't learn my lesson. A few companies ago, this weirdo got hired to a completely different department, but was CC'd in most emails sent. He felt the need to repeatedly reply that my emails were too long, too detailed, and too wordy. I replied back to him with all the other directors CC'd that were also on the original email and told him that it was not his business to be reviewing my reports or giving me feedback. Fortunately, my operations director, who I directly reported to, replied in the same email reiterating the same thing. His stupid little ego got deflated and he didn't bother me again. Next story. Background. A decade ago, I was an admin for a hospital. One of 2 admin, a couple of techs, and a few application support people, and a couple of programmers. Our boss, the IT director, let's call him Fred, had a temper. Whenever something happened, if we didn't go directly to him for guidance, then he would get angry. Now, most of the team he never yelled at or got mad at because he didn't know enough about IT to understand their jobs. For some reason, probably due to my demeanor at the time, and not anymore thanks to him, I just took it and did what was asked, and what was needed, he would take his anger out on me. It was so bad that the team often referred to me as the sponge, able to take Fred's red-faced yelling, and after he vented, he was fine for a few days until something else sent him off. The catalyst. One morning, our primary outward-facing web server died. This was not unexpected, as I'd been telling Fred that it was old and needed a refresh, but he called me an alarmist and said as long as we had a system backup, we did, that it wasn't an issue. I mentioned if hardware died, we would have to have the hardware handy, but it fell off deaf ears or shrugged. Well, when it died, I got an alarm about it and was in the data center trying to get it back up and running when Fred came in and told me to get it working right away. I tell him I'm already on it, but it is looking like the RAID controller is hosed. I doubted I could get it up soon and that I would need to harvest parts from decom servers to build one if he wanted it today and to order a new server immediately, that the specs were in his email from me. He tells me that I have 30 minutes to get it back up and running, or I will get written up for refusing an order and for neglecting my duties. I replied that even if I could get a server built and an OS loaded in that time, it was going to take more than 30 minutes to copy the data over to the new server, and that I cannot change the laws of physics to suit his fancy. He replied with, "You now have 29 minutes," and walked off. Yeah, he wrote me up for it. I took an hour to get it operational, and the data took about as long as to copy, but it was up and under in under 3 total. If I didn't sign, I would be terminated immediately, so I signed it but added, "under duress." The beginning of the end. A few months later, Fred came to my desk and asked what I was doing. I told him I was going over patches that needed to be applied to various servers and hardening the ones that could not be patched for various reasons. Fred asked me, who told me to do that? He had assigned me a job and he expected me to get it done. The job he had assigned was setting up a laptop in one of the conference rooms for a CPR refresher class that was next week. It was Wednesday and I had all day that day and 2 more days to get it done. He chose me and not a tech because, well, I never knew why, honestly. Even the techs were baffled, but you never argued with Fred. Anyway, I explained that I had plenty of time to get that done and would ensure before I left on Friday that it would be waiting, and I would even come in early to brief the presenters. Well, that wasn't good enough. Fred proceeded to yell at me for 30 minutes in his office with the door closed per usual, about how I was insubordinate, and he paid me to do what I was told when I was told to do it, and that anything I thought that needed to be done, I was to immediately forget it existed and do only what was assigned by him. I was to be at his disposal at any time. I was on call a lot too, and that unless something was physically on fire, I was to do only what he explicitly assigned me. Okay, cue malicious compliance. For the next several months, I did exactly as he instructed. I did not mention patches or scan for vulnerabilities. I did not even log into a server at all unless he told me I needed to do something specific. I didn't even restart services or disable terminated users unless he told me to. We would get a list of terminated users each week, but unless he told me to work the list, I did nothing. The other admin did the same as well, since it would have made his job impossible if he did it all. Then one day, I got asked to apply for a position with corporate. I went to the interview, and they already knew who I was and basically said they wanted me. They mentioned that policy stated that they had to tell Fred, and I told him that if Fred found out, he would fire me because he wouldn't like the promotion over him. The role would have made me over his data center, but not his team. They said they doubted he would do that, so I said okay. Well, sure enough, when Fred got wind of my promotion, he fired me. The worst part, he fired me in a way that made it impossible for me to get the corporate job. They rescinded their offer. No reason given, but after speaking with a lawyer, it got changed to resigned because he would have made it impossible to work for him if I had returned. The fallout. A few weeks later, I had another job, better pay, and I was the IT manager. About 6 months later, they had a data breach, was nasty and all over the news. Fred was encouraged to resign. I learned much later that someone from my old team had contacted corporate and told them what happened and why Fred fired me, and he got in really hot water. Then the data breach happened and he was going to be fired, and he knew it, so he resigned before they could fire him. I looked him up a few times after that. He tried life as a contract project manager but never finished any projects. Now he's retired. Wonder why. Edit. Since there is a question as to how I got screwed out of my promotion, I will paste my reply here. I'm sorry to leave it so vague. Corporate offered me the job on a Tuesday to start in 3 weeks. Fred fired me on Thursday. By Thursday of the following week, the corporate reached out and told me that due to me being fired, they were no longer able to extend their offer. The person that called me was not the person that hired me. I told them to contact the person that hired me because he knew this would happen. They said it's not their policy to do that and I'm ineligible for a review. I even tried emailing the person that hired me and he tried to go to bat for me, but corporate HR told him that I was not eligible for rehire. That is when I went to a lawyer. The lawyer wrote some letters and was able to get them to change my status, but because the corporation hired someone already for that role, I would have to take my old role. I declined for obvious reason, thus the resigned status. I used to have a manager like that, and one day a critical server went down and he was hovering over me asking for my time estimates, cause etc. I finally told him to get out of the server room so I could do my job, and that he was making the downtime longer by interrupting me all the time. He backed down but complained to his manager, who told him to leave me alone. Thank goodness his manager knew that I knew my job, and I was able to resolve the issue in less than an hour. I work at a tech company and my official job is fairly simple, and I find that I have free time decently often. My unofficial extra jobs used to be monitoring the morale level in the office and doing things to bring up said morale. Tech support on the computers in the office so IT doesn't have to deal with it, mostly because I'm faster than they are at getting things going again, assuming the problem isn't hardware related, and often enough helping out other departments when I have the time. A promotion comes up, so I apply for it. The boss gives it to someone who had only been hired a few months ago. I was annoyed by this because I'd been working there for much longer and my evaluations are always glowing. Another promotion comes up, I get denied again in favor of another person who has only been there a few months. 3 more promotions come and go and my boss always gives the new people the promotions. At this point, several people who have been hired around the same time have also quit to seek opportunity elsewhere, and many of the people who got promoted also quit because they used their promotion to get a better job elsewhere. Also, the boss likes to send an email with a bullshit canned denial letter with some official reason as to why you were not selected. I eventually decide to confront my boss about it, so I just bluntly ask, what am I doing wrong? Why are people who have been recently hired getting promotions over me? The boss couldn't answer. He stumbles and stutters for about 2 minutes like the sniveling pencil neck he is, eventually just blurts out, look, you don't have much experience in dealing with people below you, and I really need you to just do your job. Alright, as you wish. Now, anytime someone asks me if I can get their computer, monitor, printer, etc. working properly again, I tell them to ask tech support. My bi-weekly delivery of homemade confections has come to an end, and I no longer lift a finger to help other departments even when I do have extra time. Tech support can take a surprisingly long time to get around to our department, something I could have done in 10 minutes. It will take them an hour or more. It's also a 3-person department in a fairly large office building. My boss pulled me into his office a while back and asked me if I had a problem. I told him I don't have a problem. He then reminds me of all the things I used to do that I suddenly don't do anymore, then makes the mistake of asking me why I suddenly stopped. I told him that none of those were part of my job description and that I only did those things as a courtesy. But since he told me to just do my job and strongly hinted that I'm to go no further in the company, I am going to do just what is part of my official job description from now on. He went from having a poop-eating smirk on my face, ready to tear into me for my sudden change in demeanor, to realizing that he can't say a damn thing because he knows that he can't order me to do anything outside of my official job description, and that he screwed himself and his entire department over by basically telling me to shut up and get back to work. When you're too good at your job to promote, happens quite frequently. I've seen it in several of my jobs. It's a catch-22 to be good at what you do. On the one hand, you get glowing evaluations, the boss loves you for what you take on extra at your job, the other staff knows they can come to you to fix things, often you know how to do/fix things, even the boss doesn't. You think promoting would be a no-brainer. On the other hand, you're doing all the things that the boss would have to handle if you get promoted, including the things the boss doesn't know, so promoting you would cause more work for the boss. It's unfortunately the current work culture. It's easier and in some cases cheaper for them to hire someone new for management than train people to learn what a knowledgeable/helpful employee knows, so why bother? I've seen it slowly change recently since the Great Resignation. It's become an employee's market. So they're promoting from within so they don't lose more workers. P.S. OP, I would suggest finding a new job that actually values what you do. OP, make sure you document this entire situation. If you can find all the dates you applied for promotions, the names of the people who had less experience that got promotions instead of you if possible, to you questioning your boss as to why you weren't given a promotion and his response, all the way up to the meeting and what was said verbatim. If your boss tries to retaliate in any way, you can go above him, to his boss with everything you've documented. If he were to set you up to get fired, it's possible you could file a lawsuit. I am no lawyer by far, but I know documentation could help you if your boss decides to get revenge.